Shortly after the hour had passed on the palace clock, an official communication shocked the entire country. In just a few minutes, what had previously been debated behind palace doors in 7 Chile turned into a public catastrophe. The subject is Prince Louis. The power of the song brought a regal mother to her knees. Aside from Catherine's tears, other things were gushing. There were also questions, anxiousness, and a desperate need for answers. What could be so disastrous as to shake the fundamental foundations of the House of Windsor? Before we get into more detail about what this truly means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any updates. This kind of imperial pronouncement strikes the nation's throat like a chilly hand because it lacks pomp and confidence, succinct, reserved, and very careful with every word. This kind of statement issues a warning without offering an explanation. And almost immediately, the royal machine did what it usually does in such circumstances. It tried to maintain its composure. It tried to distill the message. It attempted to protect the crown from terror, but the general populace was uneasy. The phrase "tragic news" did more than only grab attention. It astounded them. Those 2 words, written in official language, are never taken lightly by the monarchs. When they are unable to conceal, soften, or just keep quiet, they save that phrase. In a matter of minutes, every major newsroom entered emergency mode. Producers started reaching out to people they hadn't spoken to in a while. Royal journalists began talking faster, moving faster, and declining to be filmed. All of a sudden, the question was not if something had happened, but rather how severe it was and how long they had known about it. People had already started to detect something unsettling that didn't fit the official tale because the palace announcement wasn't anticipated, and it clashed with that. A few hours earlier, instead of her usual serene gait, Catherine was seen leaving Kensington with an unfamiliar-looking countenance. Her eyes weren't just tired. The people closest to the royal family noticed something strange, and they seemed hurt. She was not encircled by the staff's customary serene configuration. There was no standard choreography. The tranquil perfection of the royal system vanished. For a lady who had been taught to face the world with poise, the crack was so loud it sounded like a scream. That's when the murmurs began. Some claimed it was illness, an unforeseen medical emergency requiring immediate medical attention. Others insisted that it was an unplanned accident with little time for planning or chance to influence the narrative. But the most terrifying theory is that this was not a new concept, that this was difficult for the palace to contain for a long time until it finally broke free, because the monarchy does not confirm tragic news unless it has no other choice. Despite scandals, betrayals, splits, and even public outrage, the royal family has remained silent. Consequently, the decision to speak in this manner suggests that the truth is already leaking through staff members, insiders, or the kind of personal fear that press releases are unable to conceal. And on social media, the reaction went viral. More quickly than anyone could have predicted, playful Louis began to gain popularity. They were displaying fear rather than just grief. Parents, grandparents, and supporters are all seeing Louis recordings with new eyes, reliving each scene and searching for hints. When he appeared in that manner, was he silent? Was he exhausted? Was that a fake grin? Everyone was a detective all of a sudden. Beneath the tranquility of the palace, they sensed something deeply wrong. They didn't want drama. And in the middle of it all was Catherine. Queen, not the future, not the immaculately manicured individual everyone thinks they know. Not the royal symbol, simply a mother coping with something that no title can protect you from. If this terrible news is what it sounds like, Catherine isn't sobbing for the cameras. Her child is going through something, which is why she is crying. The palace knows that soon the world will find out. Beneath the palace's skillfully written statement, though, is a labyrinth of secrets, and the real story begins in a little-known time in Louis's life that the monarchy bravely tried to hide. For years, Princess Catherine wore her signature smile as armor, but behind the radiant public image was a mother battling a hidden tempest. The silent hospital stays were seldom known. Even fewer could understand the fear behind her guarded gaze on Louis. The truth, a diagnosis that has so far been kept a royal secret. What appeared to be a normal, lively, royal upbringing was quietly overshadowed by private matters that Catherine never spoke about in public. There were references to Louis's early successes, verbal delays, erratic motor coordination, royal nanny's gentle prodding, and politely suggesting more testing. But because Catherine was always perceptive and sensitive, she was the one who saw what others missed. Behind the royal walls, she began the first of many consultations, quiet, covert visits to specialized clinics. For neurological assessments, developmental exams, and aliases, foreign experts have been flown in. It was not just a safety measure. It was desperation masquerading as calm. However, Catherine refused to let anybody else assume leadership. Even though precedent demanded a network of royal aides to handle every medical and personal aspect, she didn't trust formality with Louis. Not this time, not her youngest. She insisted on being there for every step, test, and tear. She subtly altered her timetable. Her appointments were discreetly cancelled, but her smile never wavered. It became clear to those in the closest inner circle that this was not your usual health problem. The questions had nothing to do with healing. They had to deal with getting ready, coping, managing, and possibly most unnerving of all, accepting. In the last months of her life, Queen Elizabeth was even privately told of the issue. Protect not only the child, but also the crown, was her terrifyingly earnest reply. It was not merely a cautionary tale. Charles was placed in a predicament he had long feared by a royal decree. Inside the small, claustrophobic walls of Kensington, William and Catherine's emotional agony grew worse as they had to choose between tradition and openness. As Louis's condition became increasingly obvious in private, the debate over how to treat it grew. William counseled caution, constantly considering the legacy. Catherine was motivated by mother instinct to be truthful, even if it meant being examined. Conflicts began to occur more frequently. Sharp remarks were spoken behind closed doors. Catherine accused William of being terrified of coming seen as weak in public. William shot back, saying Louis didn't know anything and she didn't realize how vulnerable the monarchy was. As if the tempest hadn't whirled around him, he was happy, laughing, painting, and relishing his boyhood. The pressure cooker tightened with each passing month, yet the public never saw the fishes. In every appearance, Catherine radiated a sophisticated grace. She guarded her son's secret with the precision of a sovereign and the affection of a mother who saw that the world might not be kind to her kid if the truth was out. Because the decision to hide Louis' condition was motivated by more than just privacy, preservation was the subject. Catherine was adamant that her son should lead a normal life, unaffected by his condition or royal responsibilities. She didn't want the headlines, she didn't want the whispers, she wanted Louis to be Louis, so a decision was taken. A dangerous one, a royal one. Keep it a secret, don't speak. Continue the illusion, not for power, but for normalcy. But no secret is kept a secret forever. And one terrible incident broke the silence, shattering the royal facade in plain sight. It happened at a private estate away from the cameras. But the consequences reverberated throughout the monarchy like a battle drum. A family thrust into chaos, an unexpected breakdown, and a medical airlift. They could no longer keep Louis a secret from the public now that the time had arrived. The royal family retreated to their rural retreat in an effort to find a moment of tranquility. There is no staffing beyond what is required, and there is no scheduled engagement. It was meant to be ordinary, quiet, and serene. But in one terrifying moment, everything was different. Louis, who had been playing nearby, froze, stumbled, and finally collapsed. He did not move. Panic immediately set in. Catherine was the first to get in touch with him. Her cry is supposed to have echoed over the countryside. In a couple of seconds, emergency protocols were implemented as they radioed in for a medical helicopter. Officials in charge of royal protection, capable of dealing with any political danger, were helpless. Here, there was no breach of security. It was even worse. It was the breakdown of a child they had been told to protect at all costs. Louis was taken to the emergency workers who were waiting for him by William, who was obviously upset. The paramedics reacted quickly since they were already aware of the potential risks. However, they were clearly nervous. and their silence during takeoff was louder than any siren. George and Charlotte were swiftly removed from the estate by a second crew who were first unaware of it. According to reports, their faces were pallid, and their questions were met with cliched, lifeless responses. They knew something wasn't right. They felt it. Conversely, Catherine broke down in public. For the first time in decades, a prospective queen lost all self-control. Witnesses said she fell to her knees, cried violently, and whispered Louis's name as the air ambulance disappeared into the sky. Furthermore, even though the public was still ignorant of the anarchy occurring, the internal command structure of the crown went into high alert. Every member of the hospital staff that had come into contact with Prince Louis had an emergency Monarch Red is a very uncommon protocol that is only triggered in situations deemed critical for national security or royal succession. The designation alone sent shockwaves through the palace's infrastructure because Monarch Red isn't granted for minor injuries. It doesn't even cover serious illnesses. It is reserved for the kind of event that can instantly alter public opinion of the monarchy, an occasion where complete control over optics and information access is necessary. Reports from within began to surface. Terms like neurological, unresponsive, and unknown cause began to appear in encrypted summaries provided to royal handlers. Senior advisors called emergency meetings. And the rumors that had plagued Louis's reputation for many years disappeared. They were loud, genuine, and unavoidable alarms. The monarchy could no longer control the tale. It was in the middle of an unmanageable crisis. This time, no amount of procedure or expertly crafted narrative could change the fact that a child, the youngest face of the monarchy, was now the center of attention, both domestically and internationally. As the world speculated and insiders feared, King Charles had to make a difficult decision that necessitated confronting long-ignored facts. When the king convenes an emergency council after midnight, there is a major issue. Sources claim that King Charles ordered a meeting of all key advisors. It was said that his tone was cold and uncompromising. This was no longer just a family problem. Charles was fed up with waiting since it threatened the security of the country. When the call came in, Charles was in the middle of addressing an official delegation abroad. An aide reportedly moved forward and spoke in the king's ear, causing his mood to go from serene to thunderous in a matter of seconds. There was an interruption to the discourse. The niceties were disregarded. Within 90 minutes, the king was back in the United Kingdom. His plane was routed under a secret royal code only at times of war or personal events that affected the monarchy's succession. Charles found Kensington in a state of chaos. Royal communications was making a desperate attempt to control the narrative, but they were not succeeding. Reporters set a camp outside hospitals. The royal red breach had triggered an intelligence-level response. The family was disintegrating within the palace, which was even worse. The first sign that this meeting would be unlike any other was the silence. There was no request for Camilla, no explanation, no courteous message, no inclusion, and no deliberate decision. Those closest to Charles saw that this was a sovereign's problem, not a spouse's. This was not only personal. It was constitutional. William was nervous 1 hour after his father's arrival. "I'm disappointed." He reportedly advised against any early disclosure, warning that doing so may permanently damage Louis's future and erode the public's already precarious trust in the monarchy. Thus, the truth about Prince Louis is still shrouded in silence, worry, and unsolved questions behind the palace's imposing walls. A mother in tears, a midnight emergency meeting, and a royal family abruptly forced to face a reality they had worked so hard to conceal. One terrifying question has been raised by this moment for the outer world. What is actually going on within the Windsor house? Is this just a private family dispute that the palace is attempting to shield, or is it the start of a catastrophe that could permanently alter the royal family's future? The palace is silent for the time being. However, as history has often demonstrated, secrets inside the royal family seldom remain undiscovered. And when the whole truth comes to light, it might tell a much more compelling tale than anyone anticipated. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and enable notifications if you want to be informed about all new developments, royal updates, and the untold tales taking place behind palace walls. Because the most significant revelations about the royal family frequently occur when people least expect them.